The Johnsky is a YouTube channel run by and run for people over the age of 13. People under the age of 13 should click off of this video right now, or watch with a parent or guardian. Viewer discretion is advised.
You don't scare me!
Mild is frickin' Namelishman. My name is King Prime and welcome back to another video here on the YouTube channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at another brand new Star Wars The Vintage Collection action figure, that being the Star Wars The Vintage Collection The Bad Batch Hunter. At long fucking last, he's here! Finally! This is the first vintage collection figure we've got for the Bad Batch, and as a child who grew up on the Clone Wars and a teen who grew up on Rebels, and now being an adult who adores the Bad Batch, or at least thinks it is one of the better products that Disney is currently producing, it is so good to finally have Hunter. And when I say the first figure from the Bad Batch, I mean the team, the Bad Batch, not the show. Because, of course, we had that shitty 4-pack that never sold. But with this, our first member of the Bad Batch. Before I get into the figure itself, let's take a look at the card back and what he comes in. At the top here, we have that nice The Bad Batch trade in that crimson red we are used to. A nice picture of Hunter from the show. The Kenner trades down at the bottom. And a green pill and green nameplate for his name, which is Hunter. On the back of the card, we have the other figures that are included in this wave, that being Admiral Piet, who I will be reviewing, Hunter, obviously, Cassian, and/or in his Aldani mission disguise, the Imperial Army disguise, who I've said in a previous video I will not be getting, Phase 2 Clone Trooper, which I will be getting a million of, but I don't have yet, Starkiller, who I have, and am debating on reviewing, Cal Kestis, who I've reviewed, Vel, who I've reviewed, and Cassian, who I've reviewed. Down at the bottom, we have the legal jargon, and that's about it. I said in every single video, my friends, you only really care about the packaging if you are a carded collector, of which I am not. I'm here to open toys and review them, and that is just what I'm going to do. Freeze frame.
He says it every morning. He calls me Clanka. He calls the other B-series Clankas. He calls himself Clanka all the time. Clanka this, Clanker that. Clanka please, nerf Clanka. Clanka, have you lost your processor? Clanka, check that motivator. Clanka, you bullshittin'. Disassemble yourself, Clanka. He says it so much, I don't even notice it anymore. Last week, T1-48036 said, can a Clanka borrow some oil? And my first thought wasn't by the force. He said the word, the C word. It was, how is a Clanka gonna borrow some oil? Clanka, is you gonna recycle it back?
Freeze frame on freeze. Oh my god, this figure lived up to the hype. So much so. I just want to say it right now. I'll say it again later. But the wait was worth it. Before we get into Hunter himself, let's take a look at his accessories. That includes that backpack, which I just removed from his back. This is just the same, hard case backpack that we've been seeing since the early 2000s for the Clone Commandos, which of course has been used on Hunter. I do not know if this is the same mold that was used for the Republic Commando 4-pack that came out in the early 2000s or the early 2010s with the Clone Wars release, but it is that same design for that backpack as well. It's just a piece of plastic. There's no actual, storage places, or it doesn't open up or anything like that, which is unfortunate, but, it's all right. Of course, we do have Hunter's Vibro knife, which is painted in that nice silvery plastic, and the handle is just a plain gray. Of course, he can wield this knife right like that, which is nice. Of course, he does hold it with his other hand because he draws with this hand. But, of course, other than holding it, he can store it right in that little sheath on his wrist, which is a great place to store it, in my opinion. It's so tactical and stuff like that, and I had it in backwards. Whoops. But it is very nice to see that as a functioning piece and not just as a sculpted piece. He, of course, has his helmet, which is the very, very faithful representation of how it looks in the show. Done in that gray, red, and then lighter gray styling. It looks absolutely phenomenal, in my opinion, right out of the animation style, but also realized for a realistic take. Of course, this is a helmet, and you can actually wear it, and unlike most vintage collection figures, It looks very proportionate on his head and looks absolutely phenomenal in my opinion. Also included with Hunter, we do have his DC-17M, which is just the regular Republic Commando blaster. It has a magazine sticking out on the side, which you cannot remove. It doesn't really transform or anything, unfortunately. That would be really cool, but he can hold it, of course, on his right hand. He can't hold it in his left, unfortunately, because there's no trigger finger. But in his right hand, he can hold it, and he can also hold the included DC-17 pistol. I believe this is just the same one that comes with like the ARC Troopers, Captain Rex, all that stuff. I don't know if it's a new mold. I'll have to check it out later. But he can also hold that as well. Unfortunately, there is no storage for either of those weapons, so that DC-17 is literally just going in my bin of holding, I guess I should say. But on to Hunter himself. Let's get him stripped down of his stuff. Absolutely phenomenal looking. He looks so good. It is a perfect realization of that sculpt. His skin tone is matching with figures like Boba Fett or the other clone troopers that we've gotten. He has that nice skull tattoo which goes around the rest of his face, and his little Rambo headband with the skull on it, which is cartoon accurate and looks so good. He has the Clone Force 99 logos on both his right and left shoulders, which again, phenomenal. Love to see that. He does have a little bit of battle damage on his chest piece, and it goes all the way down. His undersuit is sort of visible there, as well as on his thighs. He has very nice red detailing all the way down his armor, on his left and right arms. Of course, I already mentioned he has the sheath there for his knife, his vibro knife. That little damage continues on his thighs, and that red detailing goes all the way down to his shins as well, in the bottom of his feet, which are, of course, just the normal clone boots, just in a gray instead of a white this time. And that is about it for the detailing of the figure. As for the articulation, I had feared for my life that this figure was going to be just a remold of the VC-45 clone mold, which is okay, but it's not the best. This is a completely new mold using repurposed parts, which have new articulation, and it works so well. So, of course, he does have a double dumbbell joint at the neck, so he can go and it works really well, and he can also go which doesn't really work, but he also does have some very clever engineering for his shoulder pieces, which are soft plastic. You can see there are little straps that go into the inner recesses of his chest plate, and they can move with the arms as well. They stay out of the way, though. They are very nice separate pieces. He does, of course, have a full range of motion, though, considering these are soft plastic, so he can go all the way around, and that shoulder piece goes with it, which is phenomenal. So good. He has a very deep elbow joint there, and a full wrist swivel, as well as an in and out at his left hand, and an up and down on his right, which is standard, and in my opinion should be standard with most of these figures. He does have a ab crunch, so you can get his reps in. He also does have a joint at the waist proper, which is awesome to see. He has, as I mentioned earlier, dumbbell joints at the hips, which was my biggest concern, and also mind the angle there. Great stuff to see. He has an upper thigh cut, as well as a deep knee bend. Well, not really deep, but it goes more than 90 degrees. He also has a hinge down and up at the foot, and a ankle pivot to boot. So the posing, the engineering on this figure is phenomenal. Like, I cannot stress that enough. It is so good. This figure is amazing. I'm going to gush about it for the rest of this fucking review. But before we get to the rest of the review, let's get some other figures in here for a size comparison with Hunter Freeze Frame. Freeze frame unfreeze, and here is Hunter next to the golden standard of action figures himself, Dark Times Darth Vader. Here he is next to a custom Mandalorian of my design. And here he is next to our previous vintage collection review, Cassian Andor from Andor, who I will have to hold up because this fucker doesn't stand. It's night and day compared to Cassian, what kind of a figure Hunter is. Hunter is, of course, a hair taller than him, and you can tell that Hunter is just a little bit based off of an animated character, but he is still towered over by Vader and the other Mandalorian, but Hunter himself stands pretty tall, average height, I'd say, for a vintage collection figure. But that's not even even the remotest best part about this figure. That will be mentioned in my final thoughts, which I should get to now. Freeze frame.
Oh, look at the little baby. And now look at the big baby. Wah.
Freeze frame unfreeze. So, overall, this is, in this reviewer's opinion, the best, and I do mean the best, Star Wars Vintage Collection figure that has been released since Dark Times Vader. And before that, I cannot tell you who the best figure is. This is just second best. The engineering on this figure is superb. It looks phenomenal. It has many accessories. The articulation is fantastic. It essentially hat tricks the big three of figure production, which is something I haven't seen done since Vader. This figure is, if there's any figure you're going to get from the Vintage Collection line, make it this one. I hope to God, at some point, that we get the rest of the Bad Batch. I cannot wait to see what they do for Tech, Crosshair, Wrecker, and Echo. If this figure is anything to go off of, it is going to be one of the best teams that we have in the Vintage Collection line. I am often very harsh on these Vintage Collection figures. I was very harsh on Val and Cassian. I've been very harsh on other figures in the past. This figure I am not harsh on because Hasbro took a huge W with the design and the production of this figure. I just wish it had come out a little bit earlier and was a little bit better distributed. But other than that, this figure is supreme. One of the best I have ever seen in my entire life. And I will definitely not be putting in the ban of shame and being proudly displayed on my Clone Wars shelf. But if you like the Clone Wars, or you like Hunter, or if you like the Bad Batch, or Star Wars in general, make sure you share this video with your friends, share it with your Facebook groups, all that good stuff. If you like the content, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. It keeps helping me make this content. That's going to be pretty much it for this time, my friends. Thank you all so very much for watching, and as always, peace.